Welcome to the RSVP Northern Virginia Podcast, where each week we'll take a look at some of the outstanding volunteer opportunities available to seniors in our area. I'm your host, Rob Payne, an Outreach Assistant with RSVP. Hello, welcome to our newest RSVP podcast. This is part 2 of our visit to Capital Caring, and today we have the pleasure of being with Gordon Hay. Gordon, I'm going to put you on the spot. How long have you been an RSVP volunteer?
Well, for about 5 years, actually.
5 years.
My first phone call to the organization was in 2012 when I was looking for some volunteer experiences.
That's excellent. And Gordon is a how should we put this, a multi-talented volunteer, in that he works at 2 of our great partners, being the Literacy Council and here at Capital Caring. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do at both of them?
Sure. Well, at Capital Caring, there are a number of really great volunteer opportunities. I chose to do something where there's a really strong need, and that is to be, it's administrative help, helping the organization, mostly as a receptionist, but I do other things in that role. And what I do mostly is answer the phone when people call, and the calls are important. You know, they need to speak to patients, they need to get a hold of physicians, pharmacists call for prescriptions, etc. So I make sure the call gets routed to the right individual. And as people walk in to visit, because visiting hours are 24/7, they come in and I help them get to where they need to go, to where the patient's located, or to the nursing station if they have questions about how their loved one is doing.
How did you get interested in volunteering with a hospice, a palliative care facility?
Well, I've known about hospice for many, many years. I work for a very large healthcare organization in Northern Virginia, and in the oncology division, and had an office actually for 15 years in their largest hospital. And if you're working in oncology and working with physicians, you're visiting patients. I came to learn the importance of hospice for patients who are at the end of their life. It's really a wonderful program. There are hospices all over the country. Capital Caring is one of the largest hospitals and has a very good reputation. It used to be called Hospice of Northern Virginia. Now it's Capital Caring. But knowing the importance of the work that hospice employees and hospice volunteers do, I just thought this would be a great opportunity to really to help out, and also to use the things that I learned working in oncology for 24 years and in a hospital setting.
That's excellent. So you were really well prepared for that. And now, being the receptionist, and when we were talking with Amy Lynn in our last podcast, she was saying that the reception area is totally run by volunteers. That's correct?
That is correct.
And you're the first person people see when they come in here, so it's an extremely important place. Could you talk a little bit about that and just sort of the manner that you take with folks?
Sure. Well, having actually seen quite a few patients at the bedside that were dealing with cancer, some in the terminal stages, I've often met with family members too, in trying to help them really cope with the situation, that their loved one was in. But when people come in, yes, I am the first person that they see, and we are all manned by volunteers, and it's a big responsibility, because if you don't come to your shift, then there may not be somebody there. Though fortunately there are a lot of backup volunteers, so generally it's covered. But you're dealing with patients here. It's a 15-bed facility, and they're dying. In fact, just a week ago, we lost an employee that I got to know, who worked for hospice for, I think, 36 years, and he actually was sent to this hospice from the hospital and passed away. But I know what they're dealing with when they come here to visit their patients, because of the work that I did. And when they leave, it's somewhat the same situation. They've seen their loved one. You really don't know what situation their loved one is in, but it's a difficult visit. Mm-hmm. So when they leave, I try to connect with them before they go, and just to say hello and have a good day. And sometimes they want to stop and talk. And having done quite a few support groups for families dealing with cancer, I've got some good experience in that area. So.
That's excellent. And again, going back to the receptionist, you must come in contact. How many days a week do you volunteer here? What's your normal?
So for now, it's one day, one afternoon a week.
Okay.
Sometimes we're called in to substitute if necessary, and I try to help with that when I'm available. But right now it's one day a week.
So you must come in contact with just, what is it, a 4-hour shift usually?
Yes, one afternoon a week.
One afternoon a week. No, that's fine.
Correct.
And so you must come in contact with a lot of people. I mean, again, going back, just coming in and out and so on. Let's switch gears for a second, and we're going to talk about the other volunteering you do with RSVP, and it would be working with the Literacy Council, which is based in Falls Church,
Correct.
where you currently live. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Literacy Council and what you do over there.
Sure. Well, I think it's important for me to mention that when I retired in 2012, I really wanted to make sure I was going to continue to be productive. And productive for me means helping people, because that was pretty much my work for my entire career. I was in child welfare for many years, too, and then I went into healthcare. But the Literacy Council in Northern Virginia has a wonderful goal, and that is to help teach people that are coming from many different countries, help learn for them to learn English. And they have 3 levels. They're ESL classes, basically, but they have 3 levels: level 1, level 2, level 3. But what I was interested in is really helping people who, as I mentioned, come from a number of different countries, but who come here with so many challenges and so many things that they have to deal with. I mean, some of them don't know where to live. Most of them don't have any income. And so they come for different reasons. Some come because they've been persecuted by their government. That certainly was true for some African countries. Some come because they won the lottery. And some come because they want to take advantage of what the United States has to offer. I think still thinking of the USA as a land of opportunity. So I just really wanted to be a part of that, and I thought that would be an opportunity for me to help folks in that situation. Because learning English is a beginning. You know, you can't really find a place to live. You can't really get a job. You really can't move forward integrating into this country unless you know English at a certain level.
That's totally true. And we were talking before we started the interview. You're somewhat bilingual. You can speak French, but it's important to stress here, I think when a lot of people, when you go through that list of all the different nationalities, to be a literacy volunteer, you don't have to understand the native language of the folks that you're teaching. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And there is a training for when you apply to be a volunteer. Of course, you fill out an application, etc. There is a very intensive 2-day training to help you kind of get started. Many folks come from the teaching profession. Actually, my wife also works there, and she was a former special ed teacher. So. But then after the 2 days training, there's also a wealth of resources that they make available online. They have an employee who specifically has responsibilities for that, and I get emails all the time, providing us volunteers information to become better teachers.
Do you teach? I think you mentioned earlier, but just to answer for our podcast audience, you teach a class of a lot of people, or is it one-on-one?
Well, I do 2 things. So I'm a class assistant. I guess you could say that's my official title. So I'm not the official teacher, but the organization relies very heavily on volunteers to help the teachers. In fact, the teachers are actually volunteers too. So, but most of them have teaching experience, which I don't have. So I prefer to become a teaching assistant, to be a teacher assistant. And there are on average 15 people in the class, regardless of the level. And myself and 2 other volunteers interact with those students during the lesson. There are lesson books that they have to follow and whatnot. So I sit at the table Sometimes I just sort of roam around helping them on certain assignments and those kinds of things. So that's a lot of fun.
Are they all ages, or is it more adult, or is it kids of all ages?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Generally, you have folks from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and even the 60s, and actually even the 70s. A gentleman from Bolivia, who actually used to be an airline pilot, is working very hard to learn English. So all ages and from many different countries, Central America, of course, but Africa. From China, we have 3 students from China in our class right now. We have actually 4 students from Vietnam that are in the class.
Do the majority of the work that literacy volunteers do, is it in the Falls Church area, or is it all over Fairfax County or Northern Virginia for that matter?
They have other locations for the classes. I think there's at least 3 other locations. This is convenient to me.
Are there ever any situations where, like, when you're doing one-on-one with people, that you might meet at a library, or is it always in a central location?
Yeah, it's always in the classroom, at the location of Falls Church. But I also, I guess I neglected to mention, I also do tutoring once a week with one of the students in level 1 who came from the Ivory Coast and didn't know any English at all, fluent in French. And so they were looking for somebody to tutor her after class, who knew French, and that was me. So I spend an hour with her. She's a young lady in her actually late 20s. And her motivation to learn English and become integrated is absolutely wonderful. It's just amazing.
That is amazing. And I guess there's several benefits to doing this, but I guess just on a side note, when you're dealing with all these people from all around the world, you must really hear some pretty interesting stories and meet a lot of interesting people. It
is very interesting. That's part of why I've continued to do this. I think I'm in my 3rd year now. And it is very interesting because we do talk about the culture from other countries. We share some of that so that they see that we respect their language and that we respect their culture.
Sure. Now, you had also mentioned in our pre-interview that you at one point were a volunteer coordinator yourself, or you were involved with volunteer services. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Okay. Actually, when I started with this large healthcare system that I mentioned previously, I started recruiting volunteers for their cancer program.
Now, the reason I asked that question is because you are also in a good position as a senior and as someone who's been on both sides of the volunteer game. Why is it important that people volunteer, especially seniors in particular?
Well, I think it gives, for people that have retired, and though perhaps not all seniors have necessarily retired, though many more are retiring now, as everybody knows. But I think it's important for people to feel productive and to give life meaning, to give life purpose. And there are so many volunteer opportunities out there, but I was at a loss when I first retired as to where to find those opportunities. And I'll never forget my first phone call to RSVP in 2012. And I called just out of the blue, not knowing what response I was going to get. And I spent half an hour on a wonderful conversation with a woman who gave me all kinds of information about how to volunteer in the community through RSVP. And that got me started. But I'll never forget that phone call because it got me in the right direction and got me going.
That's great. And that's one of the things that we really try to get across to folks who are thinking about volunteering with RSVP in particular, is that we have that variety, and folks like Carly, who's with us today, the volunteer specialist, and Nadia, our program manager, are really experts in pairing people up, and they take that extra step to make sure that people are in the right place at the right time, which I think is unique.
Yeah, no question. In there, when you need them, they're there. So, and that's nice to know. That I've got an organization behind me with I've met the staff. They're competent. They're motivated. Their energy is like, gee, I wish I had some of that energy. But anyhow,
and then finally. Just to be repetitive here, but what do you personally get out of volunteering? Just yourself. How does it?
No, same thing that I did when I was in child welfare for many years, working with abused, neglected kids in more of a management role. But when I moved into healthcare, the idea was to really help people. And so it's just to continue, even though I'm not getting paid, and I don't want to be paid, it's a continuation of what I've done all my life, really,
Sure.
pretty much. You know.
That's fantastic. And for those folks out there that haven't volunteered yet, whether they're retired or not, but they're over the age of 55, because for our program, what would you tell them just to if there's any block there where they're thinking, I don't know if I want to volunteer or not,
Yeah.
what would you tell them?
That's a good question. I have a very good friend that I bike ride with on a regular basis that I've known for many, many years. And he's retired. And on a bike ride, I told him about RSVP and what opportunities are available. And he did sign up, and he's helping folks with taxes right now. So, but I think, especially with men, there may be that I've retired. There's kind of a reluctance, first of all, to retire and to let go, because what I hear is, well, what am I going to do? And that's a point in time in the conversation where I just love to jump in and say, let me tell you what you can do when you retire. This is a great organization. It's federally funded. It's all over the country. And there's a local chapter here within Fairfax and Falls Church. And they just have so many opportunities available that you can continue to be active and to have things to do, so you're not, I know you're worrying about sitting at home and not having anything to do. You won't be sitting at home if you get involved in volunteering.
We keep you busy, definitely. Well, thank you again. I want to mention, while we're here in Arlington and not too far from Falls Church, that we will be holding an orientation at the Literacy Council on January 12th at 10:30 a.m. and that's located in the Lee Center in Falls Church, which is less than a mile from downtown Falls Church. I mean, it's almost within walking distance if you're in good shape like Gordon is. And we also plan, hopefully in the next few months, to be having an orientation at Capital Caring. So that gives folks an opportunity to meet some of the people we're talking to today and get a better idea firsthand exactly what the lay of the land is. So Gordon, thank you again for being here. We appreciate you moving your schedule around. You were very good. And thank you. And thank you for hosting this podcast. And Amylyn, and we will talk to you soon.
Yes,
thank you again.
Certainly my pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today on the RSVP Northern Virginia Podcast. For Carly Hubicki and Nadia Hoonan, this is Rob Payne saying thanks and have a great day. Remember, RSVP Northern Virginia, matching great senior volunteers with great opportunities. For more information, please visit our website at www.rsvpnova.org. Have a great day.